Hello, good evening everyone, and thanks for joining us for tonight's education session on recruitment, attracting GPs to your practice in the Hunter and Manning regions. My name is Charles Broadfoot and I'm one of the Professional Development Officers with Hunter New England Central Coast, PHN. I would firstly like to acknowledge the First Peoples and traditional custodians of all the lands in which we are meeting on tonight and pay my respects to elders past, present and those emerging. Tonight's session is being recorded and the recording and slides will become available in our PHN Education Library. To access these, you just head to our homepage, thephn.com.au, and click on the Education tab. There will be a short evaluation survey that will automatically pop up when the webinar ends. If you could just take a minute to fill this out before you log off, we always really appreciate any feedback you can give us on our events. You'll see in your control panel there is a questions box. We definitely encourage you to type in your questions at any time throughout the presentations tonight, but please know we have allocated some time at the end of the presentations before we finish to go through these questions with our presenters. It's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. So firstly, we have Jessica Freyet-Tiguez, and she's the founder of Trust Medical Recruitment and has been consulting exclusively in general practice recruitment for the last 12 years. We're also joined by James Wiggins, and he's an employer brand consultant with Engaged Associates. James works with organisations to apply the tools of customer value proposition, employer branding and engagement to achieve their organisational objectives. And thirdly, we have Scott White, and Scott is the communications manager for Hunter New England Central Coast Primary Health Network. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'll now share my screen and hand over to you, Jessica, for your presentation.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thanks for joining tonight. So my name is Jessica and I'm the Director of Trust Medical Recruitment. So it's been 12 years now that I've been recruiting and consulting to general practices and general practitioners in the last 12 years of my career. So next slide. Thank you. So what we just wanted to talk about here is some of the challenges that the practices have in the area. In the Hunter Manning area, there is a range of DPA and non-TPA locations. You've also got metropolitan, rural and very regional areas throughout the region. Some are located in what we call the modified Monash model. So that's graded from a 1 to a 7. And as you may know, 1 is considered metropolitan and 7 is extremely rural. Any doctor going into a Zone 2 is eligible to go on to the training programs that are on offer with the various different colleges, such as the RACGP, the Rural Doctors Network and ACRM. Also, you've got the Rural Vocational Training Scheme for the more rural practices. So there's lots of incentives out there to train doctors towards their fellowship that we can take advantage of. I guess everybody's goal is to attract a vocationally registered general practitioner. They already have their fellowship and can bill the higher rebates with Medicare. And if they're in the right mindset to educate other doctors, they could potentially supervise other international medical graduates, which would be a great help, and also GP registrars. So what I would just like to say as the last point on this slide is that it's really worthwhile looking at other levels of candidates. So doctors who may be holding their APRA general registration and they want to come out of the hospital environment into general practice. So those doctors usually have some GP experience from their home country and have done all of the rotations in the Australian hospital system to get their general registration. And many areas in Hunter Manning can also entertain international medical graduates as well. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm just highlighting the benefits of working with a recruiter. So you're outsourcing that role of looking to hire in parallel with creating an external relationship with a professional whose job it exclusively is to find a doctor for you. Sometimes we just get so busy as a practice manager or as a practice owner or principal doctor to take on that role, and outsourcing to someone who has all of that expertise and knowledge is a real help. There's another way by extending the candidates that you're able to reach by contacting an recruitment agency. They might have a long database of lots of doctors who are passive or maybe looking for a new move. So being in touch with the agency just gives you slightly more access to those types of candidates rather than the standard job boards. Next slide. So slide 4 is all about how to build a relationship with recruiters. So here's a bit of a flow chart for you to follow. In a nutshell, the first thing you need to do is establish a strong relationship. We'd like to think of us as another important person in your life, like a real estate agents or a mortgage broker. You know, you really are entrusting us with such a big role, and we are those key people who can fulfill your need in that regard. Get to know the recruiter a little bit and put them in touch with a long-standing member of the team who is responsible for the recruitment within the practice. So that could be a practice manager or a principal GP. Just try to get to know them a little and put them in touch. Build a relationship with them by phone and email so that they are in the forefront of your mind when a new candidate comes in. That is how, to be honest, a lot of the placements are made. If I get a new doctor, I immediately think of that practice who I've built a good relationship with over the years. And keeping in touch is really important. So these days, you know, email is a regular form of communication. Even mobile phones and text messaging can be quite a quick way to get immediate responses from people. We appreciate that doctors are very busy, they're often consulting, and they're not always available to write a long-winded email or even take a phone call. So sometimes letting the recruiter know that you can communicate by messages just to confirm things like interviews or answer quick questions is a really good step. So information is really important for us as well. So we need you to provide and attach information on the practice so that we can build a bit of a profile on your clinic. Usually that's a document such as a practice profile or a range of employment questions, so that we can keep that on our database and handy to any doctors who might inquire or have some questions on your medical centre. It also helps us to write up a really effective and informative job ad for your position vacant. So in that information, we really need you to go into the details about the job, about the practice, the environment, and the earning capacity and remuneration. It's very important to provide that to us so that we can give accurate information to the doctors. The next step would be terms of business. So having terms of business that have been read through and signed off on so that all parties are happy with the terms, and the agreement is foundational and on file for both the practice and the recruitment agency. And there's always the opportunity, at least with our agency, to ask questions or come to an arrangement with the terms that suits you best. I would always recommend to work with a few select agencies, not every man and his dog, because the recruiters do sometimes pick up on that lack of exclusivity. You know, just to give you an example there, some of the large practice groups, such they send one email with a job to, and they copy in every single recruitment agency, and I just look at all these names and think, oh, what are the chances? But yeah, so just I think working with, you know, 2 to 3 who are really taking you seriously is going to work wonders. Next slide. So here I've just listed a few signs of what to look out for in a good recruitment agent. So starting off there with knowledge. So knowledge is really important. The agent needs to know about the market, what's currently happening, the local area, and what is important about the practice and about the doctors, what could attract the doctors to the practice itself. Also about the rules and regulations of getting a doctor through to the stage where they can get their provider number. So there's all these regulations, as you probably know, 19AA, 19AB, and going through the APRA process can be quite lengthy. So that is a very important factor, especially if they're managing the candidate from end to end. Recruiter expertise, knowing their stuff, pushing submissions. For example, applying for a DPA now is actually allowed if you're in a non-DPA location. So it became in September, Department of Health have allowed us to make individual requests for a practice location to become a DPA. So that process does require quite a lot of expertise and knowing what to write in the application to get a DPA approved. So if you are in a practice that is in a non-DPA location and you've had a really tough time finding a doctor or getting a doctor in because they need a DPA for their provider number, that is something that you can now do. As of September, you can apply to the Department of Health. So moving on there to time. So how much time have they been in the job? That's a really important one for recruitment because unfortunately it has a very high turnover of staff, and some people might jump industry to industry. So they might start off in IT recruitment and then move to medical, but medical has a lot of ins and outs. So I would say that's a really important factor. How much does a recruitment agent listen to you? So some agents do like just to talk and talk, but you guys have the information that we need. So we really need to absorb that, listen, understand your needs, your practice, your unique selling points there, so that we can always consider a candidate for your clinic. Following up and getting back to you, that's really important. Everyone likes to know where they stand, and be updated if a candidate is moving forward or isn't. Background checks, references, for registration, for example, and patient reviews. This is all something that the recruitment agent should be doing as part of their role. And next slide. Okay, so here I've just listed what information do you need to include for the recruiter. So go into details about the job, about the practice and work environment, the figures, the earning potential there for the doctor. Where is the practice, the location, the patient access, transport, and what is nice to do even on their lunch break. What areas would the doctor consider living in if not too close by there. So local knowledge is such a huge factor. Even details such as what are the consult rooms like? You know, do they have natural light? Is there plants? Is it a hospitable place to work? They're going to be there for 9 hours of the day, so that's really important for them to know. And also, what sort of practice is it? So is it a corporate practice or family, doctor-owned, solo practice? This all gives the doctor an inclination on the dynamic of the medical centre, and if they are coming from, for example, a corporate background, they would maybe want to move into a different environment, or they might be looking for the same again. So that's really important. How many other doctors will they be working with? And then if you break it down as well, how many male, how many female doctors, are they part-time or full-time? This all counts. The staff, the most important thing, you know, talk about the nursing support and the receptionists. How long have they been in their jobs? Do you retain your administration and allied health staff? Are they all there and mucking in and supporting the doctors really well? Talk a little bit about the team dynamics. So are they social, fun? What does the day look like? Do you arrange regular annual get-togethers and things like that? And any unique selling points. So what makes your practice stand out from the crowd? You know, I can't really emphasize that one enough. How important it is to focus on something that makes you stand out to the doctor. Asking yourself what you think it is about your centre that is different from everybody else, because sometimes you just need 1 to 3 things that can pull you from the crowd. Next slide. Okay, so here I'm just talking about additional information, extra information that the doctors would want to know. So things that have come up that are important in my career have been the flexibility of hours. So that really appeals there for families, working mums, or really involved dads who are doctors and want to, you know, have that lifestyle balance. Shifts. So also, are there weekend shifts available? VMO role required? Are they essential or on a shared roster? After hours and aged care available? That's all really important to list, because you might get someone who wants to work all hours that God sends, or you might want someone who really is looking to cut back and just do, you know, 3 days a week. So having a description on what's available can give someone an idea. Okay, billing type, again, a really important one: bulk, private or mixed. And if it is private or mixed, is going into that ratio between the two. Talking about the staff and the team, so giving a bit of an introduction actually to the staff, their background, how long standing they are, and who is who with the hierarchy. Even offering the doctor a site visit or a virtual tour. Now that's actually something that James will touch on with the virtual tour, but if we can, with COVID restrictions, you know, stage 2 of an interview process might be to invite the doctor down for the weekend or the day and take them out to lunch and show them around if they can travel to you. Principal doctors, so talking about those key people in the organisation. What's their history? Are they looking to retire or slow down? Could that evolve an opportunity for the new doctor coming in? Are they looking for someone to kind of share that role in the organisation? That's really important for those doctors who are looking for that next step in their career. Okay, so the last point here being training and educating. So we all need some more doctors who are happy to train the lower levels, such as the registrars, the international medical graduates. So not only that, but sharing, you know, a session in a week where they can present maybe a clinical case topic for the other doctors to learn from. So inviting more really eager people into the practice and talking about how that's managed in the practice for the new doctors. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I've just listed about recruiter contracts and terms of business. So when you're engaging with a recruitment agency, they should always send you a copy of their terms of business, usually when they're presenting a CV or when you start to engage with them. This is usually signed off on before you receive any candidates or even create an interview arrangement. We just like to make sure that the medical centre are comfortable with all the terms, and as we speaking for our own Trust Medical, you know, being a boutique agency, if there is anything in the terms that the practice want to negotiate or change, we are usually quite flexible or open-minded about that. I would definitely say that boutique agencies can offer a bit more in that regard. Corporate agencies, the larger ones, sometimes they're less inclined to move on their terms of business, and the rates are a bit higher. You heading up to about $25,000 placement fee for a GP is quite common there. And that's usually because they have a few more overheads to pay. One thing that you might want to consider is flexible payment options. So you can try to arrange that with the agency if you're unsure if a vocationally registered doctor is going to stay. What we are offering is a bit of a pay-as-you-go arrangement to make it easier for practices, especially after the COVID situation. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I'm just asking you to consider, as a medical centre, hiring a new GP is to offer slightly more flexible working arrangements. So in my career, I have seen examples where some GP candidates have actually asked for no contract and just to start work, and it's an ongoing relationship, but they don't want to be locked in. So just putting that out there, having a more simple letter of offer over long, lengthy 20-page contracts with lots of legal jargon, this can sometimes confuse people and also put them off. As I touched on before, having a partnership or an associate arrangement or something for them to aim for, let's say after 12 months of the doctor starting with the practice, I would say this is definitely requested a lot of the times, especially from the doctors who have gained their fellowship and they're looking for the next step in their career. Then I would just say to you to focus on more than the percentage, you know. So in all of the job ads, you might see 70% of billings, 65% of billings, but what the doctors really want to know is the income guarantee and making sure they're going to be receiving a certain amount per month, more or less. It gives them a lot of reassurance. So therefore, usually in the first 3 months of them starting with you, you would see an income guarantee of $150 per hour, making sure that they're kind of working through at least 4 patients an hour, if not more. But that is a safety blanket for the doctors. Giving them some examples on remuneration expectations, so examples of what other doctors may have billed in the practice, so that they can estimate if they're moving from a hospital position into general practice. It does help them know what their income's going to be and also how they are going to rent a suitable property or send their children to private schools. They can budget for all of those things. Okay, so what I would really encourage is fostering the educators, fostering those doctors who want to be educators and trainees, so they can train the doctors of the future. And then marketing individuals. So when you've got a new doctor joining your medical centre, really having an introduction about them on your website and telling the patients all about their subspecialities and what they enjoy in terms of their medicine. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here I'm just going to touch on employing an international medical graduate. So this slide is only applicable for doctors or practices, sorry, who are in a DPA and an MMM 2 to 7 location. So anyone in the metropolitan areas, please ignore or disregard this somewhat. But employing a medical IMG, as we call them, is really challenging, but also has many benefits. So here are the challenges. So they need to go through 4 supervision levels, and level 1 usually means 2 patients per hour for at least 3 months, and that is deemed by APRA on their registration. They need to also pass a PESCI exam, which everybody has probably heard about. They're hosted with ACRM and the RACGP. Point number 3, sometimes they need to be sponsored on a 482 visa, or usually general registrants coming from a hospital environment will need to be on a 186 permanent residency visa sponsorship. So having sponsorship set up with your practice is really beneficial. Once you've done it for one doctor, you can often do it for multiple doctors. So it's a real growth stage or tool to have there in the practice. Yes, of course, you'll need to help them settle into the area and integrate with the society. If they're coming from another country, this can be quite involved. And getting them to practice their general practice medicine into the Australian context is the biggest aspect that APRA and the colleges are looking for. The next slide. So here we are listing some of the benefits of international medical graduates. So I help a lot of these, and always the feedback is positive. You know, it's that first 3 months they need to get through. So the benefits include they can gain the higher Medicare rebates through the training programs. So as long as you're in an MMM 2 to 7, your doctor is going to be able to attract VR rates if they're on a training program. Usually they're happy to sign a 4 to 5 year service agreement, which is a pretty long time, and it's a great way to confirm ongoing doctors in the practice year after year. They do spend more time with patients because they have to. So in that first 6 months when they're consulting and they're on level 1, you know, they really get to sit down and spend a good 20 to 25 minutes per patient, and that builds fantastic doctor relationships with their patients. So it's not something to be kind of put down, because it helps build the practice. Point number 4, they are willing to learn, and they're very moldable actually to your style of practice. So if you have a certain way of doing things, or like your doctors to be a certain persona with the patients, it's a great way to make your team and your dynamic built. Point number 5, offshore international medical graduates have up-to-date general practice experience and need to convert over into the Australian context, whereas onshore international medical graduates, usually the ones who are in the Australian hospital system, usually have a combination of GP experience from their home country and general registration with hospital experience, but they might need to just roll over back into the Australian context. Grants are available for training, supervision and development towards fellowship. And most can attempt their fellowship exams after 12 months of practice in Australia. And there are multiple training programs available. So there's lots of positives. Next slide, please. Okay, so just some funny pictures here. Recruitment put-off. So from the recruiter's perspective, they're using too many agencies. It can stand out to us. And then a second one there with the lazy honey badger, not providing enough information on the position. We just need that info to do our best job. Next slide. Okay, so I've just done a conclusion here. We really love and are passionate about helping medical centres find suitable doctors, and especially for long-standing relationships. It is a very rewarding job and we do enjoy it. Communication tips, so keep in touch, provide us as much information as you can so that we can get to know you and sell your practice. Area, location, lifestyle, focus on these points. Explore your community and what it has to offer doctors. We really are in a beautiful part of the world and we can sell that. Ultimately, having another doctor helps the bottom line, and the recruitment costs are an investment. If it's a financial barrier for a practice, we're always open to making that work for you, and just ask us how. Next slide. Okay, so here I've just listed my contact details, mobile phone, email address, and where I am located on the Central Coast in New South Wales. And I have travelled overland extensively on Australia, so I can relate to a lot of the locations and what they have to offer doctors. It's just making that connection with you guys, so I hope we can. So thank you very much. Back to you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. That was fantastic. I appreciate the time and effort you've put in to prepare that for us this evening. I am now going to hand over to James Wiggins, and James will start his presentation now. If you'd like to share your screen, that looks great. Thanks, James.
Thank you. Well, and thank you for joining the webinar. So I guess by way of introduction, in my 20+ years in recruitment advertising and employment marketing, I've seen a lot of advertising habits play out that just aren't effective. And over that time, I've conducted a lot of qualitative research with candidates, employees, leaders, to better understand what actually does work, including across the health sector. So this evening, I do want to share a few tips and tools, but I also want to possibly change your mindset around what you're actually doing when you're advertising a job. I've typically found that it's that initial mindset that leads a lot of people and organizations astray when they're trying to stand out as an employer. So I guess the first mindset change is moving from a process of making candidates prove they're good enough to join you to a process of selling how good you are for them. So just that change in mindset changes everything, both in what ad messages you communicate and what media channels you use or invest in order to communicate those messages. So I think this is particularly true in candidate short markets, and the health sector has been a candidate short market, a candidate short sector for pretty much all of my 23 years in employment marketing. So I'd say that the whole reason for advertising in the first place is to change the beliefs and so the behaviors of your ideal GP candidates, not just to announce the existence of something like a job. So the whole reason you advertise is because great candidates are not right now beating your door down. the reason they aren't beating your door down right now is because they believe somewhere else is better for them or for their careers. So you need to change that belief. And the purpose of advertising is not to get the candidate to join you. Its purpose is to change the belief of ideal candidates enough for them to want to find out more and contact you, where that human interaction will actually be the decider. So with that in mind, I want to cover these 5 particular areas. And as I mentioned before, this is a combination of tips and tools that you can apply right now, and ideas to change your mindsets to better enable you to get the most out of these tips and tools. So the first thing is, I think to think about what you're actually advertising. I want to talk a little bit about writing ads, even though you may not write very many ads a year. You may only write 1 ad a year, but still it's worth focusing on them because they're important things. I want to talk about websites and web content. And again, most, if not all of you will have websites. So I want to focus on some of the things that are really useful for you to have on your websites. I want to talk about video. Video often sounds expensive and something you need to engage a professional to do for you, but that's actually not the case, but they're really powerful communication tools. I want to talk about social media. And again, a lot of people shy away from social media because of the time and the effort investment in it. But I refer to social media as free advertising, and it's often your most effective advertising. And I really want to close off by talking about recruitment really as a retention problem. Quite often, the only reason you need to recruit is because you have somebody that's leaving. So I wanted to finish up on some of the things you can keep an eye out on or keep an eye out for to reduce your need to advertise and to attract new GPs. Okay, so let's start with looking at what you're actually advertising. So one of the ideas that I'd like you to think about is that when you're advertising a job, you're advertising an experience, not a thing. So when people buy an experience, it's a much more complex decision-making process than when they buy a simple object. So this means that well before you even begin writing a job ad, there's a bit of preparation you should do first. And I guess it really means that you should be prepared for a range of conversations about those complex range of things that are important to candidates in making a job decision. So some of those conversations you'll have face-to-face or by video with those candidates, for example, during job interviews. But some you will codify into your job ads and other employment marketing activities. So it's a good idea, I think, to think about your job ad as a conversation. Think about your website as a conversation. So these are not just one-way information packages. So to help you get started in thinking about some of these conversations, I wanted to share the screenshot from a conference board research program conducted well over a decade ago now. But what I think is really useful to consider here are the broad range of categories of what the conference board found that motivated talent. And you can see here, it's never just been about the job tasks themselves. So this is where all of those things that Jessica outlined in her presentation, in terms of like what a recruiter will need to know from you about your practice, about what makes you stand out, what your unique selling promises might be. These also become really important in your communications to attract great candidates. Again, through your job ads, through your website, through your social media, through video. So things like, elements around who they'll be working alongside, the way the organization is managed, how the job fits into a career path. Those are all important motivators for the sorts of things that candidates will want to know about, even from the job ad. So, for example, if a rural or regional practice offers a wider variety of presenting conditions or higher acuity in presentations, don't expect that your ideal candidate will be thinking that when they're job searching. You need to create that conversation that points this out to them. So in the same vein, the Australian family physician in 2007 published some interesting research findings around what maintained job satisfaction for Australian GPs. So again, they're talking about job satisfaction here, but you can kind of hold this up to a mirror around what a good candidate is probably looking for, even if they're not consciously aware that they're looking for these things. And again, these are the sorts of things that you should be thinking about preparing candidate conversations about. And each of your practices will be different, requiring different conversations. But of particular interest to me here are the top three elements: variety, the culture of the practice, and longitudinal care. Now, in all of the GP job ads that I've reviewed over the last few weeks, I can't recall seeing that any spoke to the variety within any of the practices they were advertising jobs for. And I know from experience that, as mentioned just now, most rural practices present a much wider variety of clinical conditions than the average large metro practice. Now, you could say that every practice does have some degree of variety, but knowing this is the top thing providing job satisfaction for GPs, shouldn't at least somebody be mentioning it in their job ads? So again, with the second most important element, the practice culture, it doesn't surprise me that it's near the top of the list. But again, very few job ads talk about their practice culture. Very few websites actually talk about the practice culture. And the last one here, or the last of the top three here, that longitudinal care, long-term relationships with patients. Now, I would say that that's arguably a stronger likelihood in a rural or regional practice than in a metro practice. But do your candidates actually know that already? Is that top of mind? Are they consciously thinking that or not? In my experience, most don't think about it. So again, it's the sort of thing that you should be thinking about preparing a conversation about. So it's all about what makes your practice most worth looking at, most worth working at. What information will change that ideal candidate's beliefs about you to change their behavior towards you? Okay, so why bother with all of this focus on conversations and particular messages? Well, sometimes you need to solve one problem first in order to solve the bigger problem second. So your bigger problem might be hiring a GP, but the problem you need to solve first is working out how to get that GP interested in you in the first place. This is a matrix that even I find useful to think about, when thinking about the challenges in recruitment advertising, what those challenges really are. It basically looks at how top of mind your sort of employment experience really is among good candidates, and also whether candidates are actively looking for a job or not. And where you and your candidates sit in that matrix is important. So in a perfect world, we could simply tell eager GP candidates about our vacancies, and they would just apply, shown here in the top right corner. But unfortunately, I don't think that we live in that sort of perfect world. Unfortunately, the majority of ideal future GPs for your practice are not currently actively looking for a new job. You need to make them want to leave where they currently are. That should be one of your objectives. And the majority will probably not be thinking about moving to rural or regional New South Wales for a job. You need to get that idea onto their radar. And many have ideas about working outside of Sydney that stop them even considering it. You need to change that problematic belief all the way back from your job ads, through your website, through your videos, and any other employment marketing, recruitment advertising messages and tools that you use. So for your ideal candidate, both now and into the medium-term future, your employment marketing needs to achieve a few different objectives at once. But the good thing about this is that your job ad doesn't need to do all of those things. Your website can do more of those things. Your video and your social media, if you do that, if you engage in those, they can do more of those different things. Okay, So let's go on to writing job ads. Now, as I mentioned before, you may only write one job ad in a given year. But if you want that one ad to work, there really are some things you need to be aware of. So here are two ads that I recently found on Seek. The ad on the left is a fairly typical ad, but it's pretty problematic because it's really not telling candidates anything that they don't know already. Okay, so we've got, general practitioner, we've got the location, we've got the pay rates. An exciting opportunity awaits for a caring and dedicated general practitioner. You probably assume that most ads would want a caring and dedicated GP, a hardworking team. It tells you what the clinic hours are, which is fine. But again, nothing in this ad is really telling the candidate anything different, anything that's really a unique selling proposition about your practice, or at least about this practices. It talks about core values, but again, it doesn't really tell the candidates what it's going to feel like to work there, who the people are they're going to be working alongside, what sorts of patients they'll be working with. So I think that the ad on the right actually does a much better job. Fully private building, top eastern suburbs, affluent location, a beautiful, fully private practice billing practice, a dedicated physical environment that's been purpose-built, work full-time or part-time, and walk straight into a large existing patient base. Light, spacious, well-equipped, large consult rooms with windows, and starting to talk about some of the other people that you'll be working alongside. So I believe that the ad on the right is a much better job ad that does a much better job of actually hooking a candidate in, because it's starting to talk about the things that they really want to know about, rather than just a laundry list of expectations that they would see in just about every ad. Okay, so I think that one of the things that I want you to think about are the fact that, while your candidates may be smart enough to connect information about a practice with what they're looking for, don't forget that they'll be looking at lots of different ads. So you really should make it easy for them by talking about that link for them, not just what you need in a candidate, but think about what you can actually do to sell that job, if you like, to the candidate. Because really the environment's changed. Candidates really are job consumers. So we're really now in the role of job selling. So the way that you talk to candidates really needs to reflect that. As I mentioned before, now you have to influence an employment preference, not just test candidates to see if they're good enough for you. So a job ad makes a candidate aware of you. As I mentioned before, it doesn't make the candidate take the job. So ad copywriting, when you think about it, is having a positive message, conveying it in simple and straightforward language, and targeting a specific audience. So these, I think, are the things that you should start thinking about and decide upon even before writing your ad, before working out what goes in your website, and any other conversation that you'll be having with those great candidates. So think about what's actually relevant and important to my target GPs. What candidate backgrounds do I need to be aware of, that I need to speak to, that are probably going to lead to what's relevant and important to those ideal candidates? How do my targets process information? What do you think is their priority in terms of what they're looking for? What of value can I offer those targets based on what I think or what I know is going to be most important to them? And if you've worked out what of value that your practice can provide for that ideal candidate, think about how you can talk about that as a benefit. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a little while. Think about, you know, when I was talking to the mindset of the average candidate, for example, that ideal candidate who would never think of working outside of Sydney or Melbourne. How can I change that behavior? What is it that I can say about my practice, my town, my area that can help to change that behavior? And I think the other thing is, you know, what's my budget? Knowing your budget can help you to make a lot of decisions about, you know, how far and wide you place those ads, and how do you actually go about developing an advertising program. So before sitting down and writing the ad, so you've done that thinking, that preparation around the sort of conversations that you think you'll need to have. Before you start actually writing the ad, what I would recommend is just jotting down information around 4 particular areas. The person you want. So identify the sort of attributes, the behaviors, the mindsets that that ideal person has got. Then look to your own practice. What is it about the practice that you think is worth talking to an ideal candidate about? Think about the job and the opportunity, and remember to think about benefits. And here, I'm not talking about job tasks and activities, but think about, again, in the minds of the candidate, what they're looking for. Why is your practice, why is a role or a job at your practice good for their career, bearing in mind who they are? And the last thing is a call to action. So what do you want candidates to do right now? And I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but you can embed videos in ads. You can put your website into an ad. You can put your phone number into an ad. So think about what you want candidates to do. It may well be useful to, for example, embed a video, just a short, sharp video, or put your website, if you've invested into your website with great information. It may be useful to put that really short, sharp reference in the job ad so that they can go to a really good information-rich environment that will really sway their attitudes, their beliefs. Once you've gathered those 4 pieces of information, I then recommend you decide on one main selling benefit. And it should be around the what's in it for me from the candidate's perspective, because that will inform the headline and probably the first few key points that you write into your job ad. So writing ads, how to start it. I think that, you know, I mentioned that you really need to woo candidates rather than just test them, but I think you can actually do both. So for example, if you've identified, you know, what it is you're looking in a person for, in a person, an ideal candidate, think about how you can match that with a benefit if they were to come and work with you. So for example, if you're looking for an inquisitive thinker, you may be able to say, well, okay, well, I can link to what an inquisitive thinker would want in a job, that variety in practice patients that I was talking to you about before. If you're looking for somebody with experience in women's health, so you may want to talk about the fact that you've got an established practice, an interest, and a patient base that will allow somebody with that interest to actually practice that subspecialty. So, you know, when you're doing those matching, what sort of person do I want? And what is it in the job I'm offering in my practice that I can match as a benefit to those things? Some of those examples that I was kind of pointing out before, you know, our diverse client base of young families, older families, and aged care residents from both high and low socioeconomic backgrounds will reward your inquisitive mind and give you the variety to keep things interesting. So it's really weaving what you're offering and linking that to what you're looking for in that candidate, but actually just weaving that into a conversation. Your interest in women's health will be supported by both our own focus in this and our established patient base. So really a fairly short, sharp way of linking that sort of benefit with the sort of person you're looking for. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, but remember to try and link both what you want with what you can offer as a benefit. Okay, so actually writing the ads, some of the tips. Write the ad content first and then write the headline at the end. You'll actually find that that short, sharp, intriguing headline that you're looking for will be more apparent once you've actually written the full ad. When you do write the headline, as I mentioned before, keep it short. And don't rewrite or explain the headline in the opening sentence. Keep a sense of flow or direction in your copy and use that informal grammar, really as if you were speaking to somebody, not as if you were writing to somebody. So use the personal, the we, you. Use short paragraphs, short sentences, and avoid bullet points in copy. A really interesting thing about we human beings, we remember short stories, not lists. So, and I've got an example of this. It's better to engage somebody in a conversation using written copy rather than bullet pointed text. Before you post your job ad, read it out aloud. As I mentioned before, if you've written something in the way that you would normally speak, it's really easy to tell whether it truly does sound like something you would speak rather than read if you read it out loud. Make sure that you don't repeat yourself, because remember, you need to have your ad copies being short and focused and to the point. Write the ad as if you're writing it for one person. In reality, you are, although you would like to have dozens of resumes come across your desk. The reality is, if you have the mindset of writing it for one person, almost as if somebody you knew, it helps to make it more personalized. And remember, no one was ever bored into buying something. Use interesting words, use interesting benefits, use interesting examples. And if in doubt that you think, oh, I wonder if this is actually interesting to my ideal candidate, if you have to question that, take it out. Remember, short, sharp, and rely on your website and other secondary conversation portals to sway the candidate. Don't rely exclusively on your job ad. So why do ads fail? Lack of visual originality or creativity, uninspiring headlines. As I mentioned before, nothing new, just an explanation of the job title. Stale or cliched or overwritten copy, a patronizing tone. Nobody likes to read that. Whether somebody realizes this consciously or subconsciously, if you have a patronizing tone in your ad copy, they may get a subconscious sense that that's what it's going to be like to work with you. So be careful of that. Copy written for the writer and not the audience. Remember, the target of this ad is not you, it's for candidates. So again, just bear that in mind. Okay, so when you do write your headline and the introductory copy for your job ads, you do need to make sure that your headlines really stand out and your opening paragraph speaks to some of the more important benefits for your particular practice. So why is this important? So this morning I had another look on Seek. So right now, there are 495 ads for GPs in New South Wales, just on Seek. Across Australia, there's 2,955 active jobs. So as I mentioned before, on the right hand of your screen, you can see, general practitioner. It's short, sharp, but it has enough information to kind of get a general sense of what the job ad is, what the job is about. And the introductory copy, full or part-time GPs needed for GP and urgent care work in Launceston. So the thing to be aware of is that when candidates are searching actively for jobs, they scan pretty long lists of job ads. So as I mentioned, like 495 job ads they'll be looking at if they look this morning. So you need to make sure that you say something notable and relevant to them in order for them to click on that highlight to open up your job ad. Because as you probably know, when people are scanning those lists, they actually just see this kind of short headline and short introduction. They don't see the full ad. You need to tease them into actually clicking on that to see the full ad. So when they do open up that ad, I mean, just look at the difference between these two ads. The difference that an image can provide, it's so much more welcoming, so much warmer than the ad on the right-hand side. Personality is really important, even in your job ads. So think about imagery. As I mentioned before, think about embedding a video in your ad, short, sharp video, 15, 20, 25 seconds. The other thing I wanted to point out, look at the ad on the right and the laundry list of bullet points. You almost don't want to read that. It's overwhelming. So this is one of the reasons that I recommend that you don't put bullet points in. It's much better to include written copy, almost as a written conversation. Okay, so I want to move on now to websites. So as I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure you've all got them. But one of the things that, in my experience, I find that most websites don't do, I mean, understandably, they will be focused on talking to your patients. But don't forget that your website can actually be that really powerful, important conversation with your potential candidates. So this is where, and I'm sure that you probably have these sorts of sections on your website, like who is actually working in the clinic or the practice, a bit of an introduction to you and the people at the practice. So rather than it just being a resume, think about how you can reword that so it's talking about you as a person. What sort of person are you? What's important to you? Why did you start the practice up? Why do you continue with it? These sorts of things are really good introductions to you as a person, to the human side of your practice. Think about the environment that you've created. All of these sorts of things, whether they're in video or the written text, they can really do a lot to introduce what's in it for a particular type of GP by coming to work at your practice. Okay. So, Charles, can I get you to play that first video?
I don't think it's hard to understand why patients are frustrated. My passion for the integrative and functional space comes from first being a patient. I enjoyed my 6 years of practice in Asia as a surgeon, and getting intestinal parasites and having to become a patient in this overly myopic US healthcare system was the moment of enlightenment that we're missing something. The number 3 killer in America right now is actually medical error. We have a heart attack every 46 seconds in this country, a new dementia, a new cancer diagnosis every 60 seconds. And people get 10 to 12 minutes with their primary care doctor to try to sort out a very complicated individual. We as doctors, we don't treat patients, we treat a whole life. We deliver what I didn't get in medical school. We help patients connect with the head and the heart of the matter. In other words, the story they bring in here, the true motivations they have. But at Arise MD, what I think we do better than anyone else is we help patients live out their bucket list. I started Arise MD so that I could apply my expertise in dentistry, surgery, anesthesia, cosmetic dermatology, stem cells, growth factors, gut health, truly integrative medicine, to being the type of doctor that I couldn't find for myself. If you are a man or woman who are looking to get the most out of the second half of life, welcome to Arise MD.
Okay, so what I find really interesting about that particular video is, much as I was just describing, it's a video version of that sort of introduction to the practice. Yes, that the content of that video is actually aimed at patients or future patients. You know, what's the philosophy of the practice or the clinic? Why is he a doctor? Why does he practice? Why has he founded the type of practice that he has? So it's a really good example, I think, of the power of video to tell a really engaging story that's just more powerful than if you simply put the text on your website. So I want to, I guess, now look at a different form of video. So this is actually a video which is focused explicitly on recruitment, recruitment advertising. So one of the interesting things I think about this particular type of video, which is focused, you know, exclusively on recruitment, is that one of the things that it does is it takes its time to have a particular narrative structure, if you like. So it's for Bupa medical visa services. But what I find interesting here is that it begins with the candidate talking about, you know, aspirations or fears that she has, sort of based on the background that she's had as a GP. But it then moves on to talking about, so how is the experience that she's had, in this case at Bupa, changed or overcome the fears or met the sort of aspirations that she had as a professional, as an individual, and provides evidence. And it talks about, you know, how it feels to work in this particular employment experience. So think about those sorts of elements and really how they're focused on the candidate to give them an idea of not just what it's like to work in a particular employment experience, but what it feels like as a human being as well as a professional. So Charles, could I get you to play the second video?
Before I came to Bupa, I was working as a locum doctor in hospitals across Victoria. And one of the biggest attractions for me to work with Bupa is the stability of the job and also the predictability of the workload. Not having to be on call and not having to bring work home with me really helped to create a better work-life balance for me. So what I love most about my job at BMVS is the diversity in our staff, in our teams, and the diversity of the people coming through the doors. Everyone treats everyone else as a family, so we call ourselves the Bupa family, and we all try to help each other as much as we can. At the end of the day, it's all about this human-to-human interaction, which is the essence of what we do at Bupa. I feel I have become a happier person in my life and happier at doing my work and also happier pursuing my other interests. So far, it's been a win-win situation all around.
Okay. Okay, so you can see what I mean about focusing on the candidate, what it is like to work at this particular organization and what it feels like as well. Now, I guess the challenge, I guess, with that sort of video, and you may be thinking, well, I don't have the experience or the training, the qualifications to produce videos. And the reality is those videos cost about $4,000 each to produce, which is not horrendously expensive, but there is a cost associated with it. So, but what I wanted to let you know is that they can be made for a lot less. So there is an organization called Video My Job, and you can Google it, Video My Job. It's basically an online platform where you can use your smartphone to actually capture footage and sound, and then upload that to an online platform. And it's a relatively easy platform to do a bit of editing. So that is actually relatively simple, and they charge $890 per month for a subscription. But in reality, you would only need to take out a 1-month subscription to film, upload, edit, and produce your videos, and then cancel the subscription. So it can be a lot cheaper than $4,000 or more to produce those sorts of videos. So just to give you an idea of, and this is outside of the medical field, but just to give you an idea of the sort of short, sharp video you can actually embed in your job ads. This is actually an example that was developed using Video My Job. So Charles, can I get you to play the third video?
Hi everybody, I'm Kent Bloomstrand. I'm the Senior Vice President of Engineering for Experian Consumer Services. I'm coming to you from the snack room here in Austin, Texas. I want to talk to you a little bit about why I like working at Experian, and that's because it's a great place to grow your career. At my point in my career, I love just seeing other people be successful. And so there's an opportunity here to learn all new technologies like how to navigate the dark web, how to build microservices in Amazon. It's just a great place to come and be an engineer. So I invite you to check it out and join us. Thanks so much.
Right. So you can see how that still does the job. It's short, it's sharp, and actually relatively inexpensive to actually produce something like that and embed into your job ads. So having said that, I guess one thing that I wanted to introduce to you is something that you should all find quite interesting. A couple of weeks back, I was discussing, the same sort of thing in a similar sort of webinar with GP practices and clinics on the Central Coast. And in just those couple of weeks since that we had that conversation, one of those practices decided to try video out and link the video to their job ads. So within days of doing that, they already have 2 great candidates that they're speaking to right now. So when you watch this video, I want you to watch for all of the things that I've spoken about, the things that you can identify to link between the candidate that you want and the benefits that you can offer that sort of candidate in your practice or in your clinic. Things that you think that candidates will be interested in, not just what you would be interested in, but what the candidate would be interested in. So as I mentioned, this video has literally been produced in the last week or so from a practice on the Central Coast, specifically to introduce themselves to potential candidates. So, Charles, can I get you to play the next video?
Welcome to Life Medical Centre, a patient-centred medical practice that offers full service general practice as well as our specialised lifestyle medicine clinic dedicated to chronic disease prevention, management and reversal. We're looking for a GP that is passionate about delivering whole person healthcare that's outcome focused and evidence-based. Since opening at the beginning of 2021, our centre has experienced rapid growth. Our goal was to create a healthcare home for our community that encourages whole person biopsychosocial approach, where patients feel that they're truly cared for and where they can attend our centre where we have our full team of allied health professionals. At Life Medical Centre, we've built a highly regarded and fun team of health professionals that includes our GPs, clinical psychologists, the first clinical pharmacist on the region, exercise scientist, dietitian, certified life coach. We also have our team of clinical nurses and a chronic disease nurse. Recently, we also welcomed on-site Douglas Hanley Moyer Pathology. Life Medical Centre has quickly established a reputation for delivering high quality healthcare. And as such, we have formed collaborative relationships with many local specialists as well as our training hospital and the University Research Institute. Right now, we have an opportunity to offer a consulting room to a new GP ready to join our fast-growing practice. As a physician at Life Medical Centre, you will remain independent as a contractor, and we offer an excellent overhead split. You'll be supported by our team of health professionals, allowing you to focus on patient outcomes through on-site case conferencing, optimizing your GP management plans and health assessments, and doing medication reviews. We also deliver chronic disease care through our group-based shared medical appointments. Our ethos is to practice what we preach, and that means ensuring our lifestyles are balanced. The work of a GP can be extremely taxing and, if left unchecked, can become burdensome. That's why we emphasize a work-life balance and prioritize the important things in life, like family, social and personal development, as well as physical and mental health. Based on the Central Coast in New South Wales, it's really easy to find enjoyment in our local outdoors. We have some of the best coastal walks, national parks and beaches along the east coast of Australia, as well as parks, sporting clubs, cafes and shops. We know that you'll quickly settle into a relaxed and balanced lifestyle. The Central Coast also offers an array of top performing schools, both primary and secondary, which historically have ranked within the top performing schools in the state. Our volume of new patient inquiries will enable you to quickly grow your practice and establish yourself in a very short time frame. To learn more about our practice, please head to our website at www.lifemedicalcentre.com.au. It would be lovely to hear from you if you'd like more information.
Okay, so hopefully you can see what I mean, that this is, it is possible to actually do this, to film something like this on a smartphone and to actually edit it relatively easily, to be a fairly comprehensive introduction to a candidate around what you stand for, what's in it for them, what the benefits are, why they should change their misconceptions and knowledge gaps about you and your opportunity. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, and I guess by way of wrapping up, I wanted to talk about social media. So writing content for social media does take time and a commitment. But as I mentioned earlier, it is free advertising, and its content is so easily shared. A single post can be shared with hundreds of people across a broad social group. So, using that 6 degrees of separation idea, the chances are that if you have direct GP contacts who follow you on social media, they'll have GP contacts too. And among the contacts of those contacts are likely to be GPs that are looking for new opportunities at some stage. So here I've actually focused on, again, one of the practices on the Central Coast. And you can see the content here. It's not just talking about, well, I mean, it is talking about fairly ordinary, everyday activities. What they've done that day, the sort of interesting or, professional things that they've actually engaged in. But this plays a really effective role in conveying the culture, the personality, as well as the focus and the operations of the practice to potential candidates. And here I've just taken the posts of one physician, Joanna Palick, who did a stint at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. And again, overall, it's a mix of personal and work-related content. So in the two on the left, she's just shared posts that were written by somebody else. So easy to do, but it was somebody else in her organization. And that person posted a work-related post that Joanna thought her network might find interesting, or in this case, something that she's proud of and being associated with the Mayo Clinic. And it's the sharing that makes social media so powerful and so cheap. In the third post, she's uploaded a short video of her work surroundings because they are quite nice. And we know how important, that physical environment is to GPs, as it is for most candidates. And the final one on the right is a totally non-related work post, but it speaks to her personality as somebody you might like to work alongside. And here she just happens to be talking about, a rescue puppy. So while these posts, will take a little time crafting, you do get used to it and better and quicker at it. And it is a wonderfully powerful free form of advertising. Okay, so in wrapping up, I guess I really wanted to come full circle in a way. So, as I mentioned, over 20 years ago, when we first began conducting research to work out what recruitment messages we should put in advertising, what did candidates want and how did that connect with what the job actually offered? We discovered a really important missing link, because most people, they really wanted help with, how do I advertise better? How do I recruit people better? But most recruitment challenges were created by a retention challenge, created by a disconnect between what the candidate or the employee wanted and what was provided. So most people don't enjoy taking the time and effort to recruit new people. So as I advise all of my clients, remember to focus on creating an employment experience that your ideal candidates and employees actually want. And don't forget to keep providing that so you don't create that problem in the future. So in order to attract great candidates, you need to retain them as well. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, James. That was fantastic. Now, our last speaker is Scott White, and I'll hand over to you, Scott, if you'd like to share your screen again. That did pop up, but then it jumped off again.
Did it?
If you want, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Is that up there or not? No, display settings.
So it'll just be under sharing, and you just need to drop down and choose your screen. So while Scott's doing that, if you do have any questions, we will have a little bit of time right at the end to answer those. We just have one question at the moment for Jessica, But if you do have any burning questions that have come up, please feel free to type them in. And if we don't get to them, I'm sure we can always pass them on to the presenters and they won't mind. And we can try and get a response to you. That looks good, Scott. All good.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Working again? Okay, excellent. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks. And I don't want to take too much of your time, and I don't really have a lot of to add to the excellent advice and tips that Jessica and James have given you tonight. However, I will share, James was talking about 20 years ago, which sort of made me think about over 20 years ago when I did my marketing degree many, many years ago. My thoughts around advertising of what they were 20 odd years ago. And I've shared this one, which is from Ray Kroc, who was the founder of McDonald's, which was early to bed, early to rise, advertise, advertise, and advertise. And I suppose why I'm not really a big fan of McDonald's, and I don't really watch a lot of TV, and so I don't see it. But when I do on TV, I'm always seeing McDonald's ads. And so I suppose what the takeaway message from that sort of advertising 101, that lecture that I did 20 odd years ago, over 20 years ago, and I still remember, is that repetition works, and it works well. So I hear you say, I don't have a big advertising budget. And of course you don't, but as James highlighted in his presentation, there's many things you can do quite cheaply and some of the things you can do for free. And one of those things that you can do for free is advertise on the PHN's job portal, which is really easy to create an account. It only takes a couple of minutes. And then you'll see in the chat screen over on the side there's some instructions on how you do that. So once you've registered, you'll get an email back from us, which usually was within 24 hours, and it'll just tell you how to activate your account. And then once you've activated, you can start listing jobs on the PHN's portable board. And you'll see there that there's a whole range of listings. And we've got a significant number of listings there. And I suppose my advice would be very much take on board all that information that James has actually, really well highlighted tonight about actually putting your ad together. So making sure that you're focusing on all those sort of points that James got through. And certainly, I think as he's demonstrated there, the power of video and using that sort of stuff. And you can certainly embed that sort of stuff within the job ads on our website. So I would encourage you, if you haven't actually had a look at that, just go onto the PHN's website. And I said, have a look at those instructions and get and registered. And that's probably me.
Thank you, Scott. I think we might have had an issue with your slides there. We only just saw the first one. So what I'll do is,
okay. Sorry.
Scott did
you hear me?
That's okay.
Did you hear?
We did hear you. We did hear you. So I will put a copy up of Scott's slides alongside the recording on our PHN Education Library. So if you want to check out those details, they will be up there from tomorrow. And what Scott also mentioned, you'll see there's a handout in your control panel. And that's a PDF that you can download with the instructions that Scott mentioned. So I will invite our other two speakers to come back on and put your camera and your microphone on for us. We do have two questions, which we'll quickly get to before we wrap up this evening. So the first question is for you, Jessica, and it is from Rajiv, and it is, how much do we have to pay to get a full-time GP in MM1?
Wow, yeah. So with our agency, for a full-time vocationally registered doctor, our charges are 18,000 plus GST. We can arrange a bit of a pay-as-you-go for the first few months to make sure that the doctor settles in, which we usually offer for VR doctors. And yeah, some other agencies, I think the market does go up to 25,000. I'm not sure if there are any lower than me. I kind of try and gauge myself, you know, at that reasonable point in the market. So yeah, 18,000 full-time, pro rata if it's part-time.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And one last question. I'm not sure who to throw it to, so just jump in. There's just I guess wanting a bit more information. It is quite a broad question on how to recruit to non-DPA.
Okay.
Do you want to start, Jessica? Yep.
Yeah, so non-DPA gives you that section of the market where you're really looking for the unrestricted fellow doctors, so the cream of the crop. I think with those guys, you really want to focus on that change of lifestyle. You know, you want to draw them out of the cities and make them want to come to you. Maybe somebody who's just entering a different stage of life, is looking to slow down, they want a change of scene, want a fresh start. Yeah, you just need to extract those unique selling points to that market. The other market you might be able to attract is people who are coming off their moratorium and have 6 months left. They could come in as a locum and then they could continue on as a permanent unrestricted doctor. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks. Did you want to add anything, James, from your point of view?
Probably the only thing I would add is that if you specifically are looking for that type of candidate, write your job ads specifically targeting that type of person, you know, with those sorts of selling propositions.
Okay, great. There has just been a quick follow-up question. I realise we're right on 8, but I think it would be a good one just to add in. How to get non-VRGP to PET program, non-DPA?
It's not possible.
You have
to be in a DPA and MMM 2 to 7 location to be eligible for the PET program or the MD-RAP or the ACRM. It's essential criteria. And the reason these colleges are doing that is because they need to channel these doctors into the regional and rural locations of Australia. I know the metropolitan areas think we need doctors, like where are these doctors? But imagine how the regional and rural locations are feeling, you know. So I have tried this before for several people and there isn't a way at this stage. There isn't a way, I'm afraid. Unless it's Aboriginal health.
Okay. No worries. All right. Well, thank you so much. We might wrap it up there. I just want to thank our attendees for sending in those questions, but of course a big thank you to our presenters, James, Jessica, and Scott, for generously giving your time and sharing your expertise. Just a reminder to our attendees, the session is being recorded, so if you have colleagues that may have missed it who would like to watch, it will be put up on our website in our PHN Education library from tomorrow, as well as our presenter slides. And also there will be a short evaluation survey that will automatically pop up when the webinar ends. If you could just take a minute to fill that out before you log off tonight. We always appreciate any feedback you can give us. We're always looking to see how we can improve your education experience. So thank you again, everyone. We'll leave it there and we hope you all have a safe and enjoyable evening. Good night.
Night.
All right.